Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea. It is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around the virtual water cooler with us as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, all sorts of good stuff. And you can't be talking about good stuff unless you talk about the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing, sir?
Bro, I got my Baby Yoda Jameson t-shirt. Two of my favorite things right now. What's not to love?
That looks so good. That looks so good.
I mean, I wonder if it looks almost like it's a black light t-shirt. I feel like I should be in a club or something, but, you know, I'm just here in the Robservatory.
Well, you know what Baby Yoda has that for. It's so he could sanitize his hands. Like, there's no hand sanitizer going around, so he needs the alcohol content, Rob.
That's exactly what, you know, John, that must be the subconscious reason I decided to pick this bad boy up. One of those t-shirts that just pops up on Facebook. I'm like, oh, click.
You are making social commentary of the importance of people keeping their hands sanitized by wearing that shirt. That's what you're doing. You're being socially responsible. I love it. Right.
I'm also sanitizing my gullet, making sure that nothing from my mouth down into my insides is ever getting in there except the old JMO.
Hold on a second. I got to sanitize.
That's exactly right.
Hey guys, listen, we got a lot of stuff to talk about here today. We're going to be talking about, look, are people going to even go back to Comic-Con if Comic-Con stays open this year? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Sony with their Spider-Verse. Are they being too aggressive with their Spider-Verse right now? We've got a couple of movie recommendations. Universal pissed off the movie theater owners, and it's going to come back to bite them in the ass, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit too. But listen, before we get into all that stuff, you know, every day, once the show, we do the show live, then it goes up on YouTube. You guys leave a whole bunch of great comments, and I read through all the comments, and we've started sharing some of my favorite comments. So let's talk about our top comments from yesterday's John Campea Show. This was pulled right out of the comment section of yesterday's show. This one comes to us from the Jamen JJ57, who writes, hello, John. This doesn't have anything to do with any of today's topics, but I wanted to say, I started watching your show late last year. I am disabled. I have been so since birth. I am used to being at home a lot, but with the current shelter-in-place orders, it's been rough. I feel you, man. I totally feel you. I want to thank you for continuing your show. You may not speak directly to me, but just following the conversation helps me not to get stuck in my own head. We are certainly blessed to be in a time with the technology that we have. Thank you again, and everyone stay safe. We will make it to the other side of this. And you know what? One of the reasons I love that comment is because it's a testimony not just to this show. It is a testimony to the online film fan community. The fact that all the online film fan community, whether it's on this YouTube channel or another YouTube channel or a blog or a podcast or something, it gives us a community to know that we're not in this alone, and it's a great thing about that. So thank you for sending in that comment. I really appreciate that. Next comment came from Isaac Beebe, who says, well, The Walking Dead's been on TV so long that it's become real life. It's become real life. Next one is from Holly Roxy, who writes, I've been using this downtime to catch up on classic TV I loved from my childhood, like Mystery Science Theater 3000 and Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which are both available here on YouTube. First of all, okay, full shout out to Mystery Science Theater 3000. Absolutely. They do great stuff. God, Rob, I love Space Ghost Coast to Coast. I love that show so much. It makes my heart happy whenever somebody jumps in the comment section and wants to mention it. And the last one we're going to cover here today comes from Kyle Arking, who writes, thank you, John, for doing the 10-year anniversary segment. You brought me back to the memories I had of 2010, the year I became an avid film fan. That year, I saw my first R-rated film in theaters, The Wolfman. I wasn't old enough to see Kick-Ass, but you were old enough to see Wolfman? But I still watched the trailer multiple times online, along with the trailers to Inception. I would watch a movie show called Hollywood Dailies, I remember that, and Leonard Maltin, who is one of the greatest of all time, Leonard Maltin, Secrets Out on the Reels channel. It took years until I found another movie show just as fun, and now that's your show. All right, thanks a lot for writing that in, Kyle. I appreciate that. Little known fact, Rob, back when I was at AMC, Reels channel made a pitch to us to take our show to Reels channel.
Wow.
At least someone did. Someone from Reels channel. I wasn't interested. I wasn't really we were just getting it going. I had no interest in giving up a lot of creative control, but that was an interesting thing. But Leonard Maltin one of the GOATs. Okay, guys, we now got some stuff to talk about. Don't forget, tomorrow we're going to highlight some of your comments on today's show. So make sure you guys drop some comments in today's show as well. Before we get into our main topics, let's go right off the top with this. Rob, today is a monumental day.
Uh-oh.
It is a great day. It is a day that the world should stand still, take a moment, and pay honor to the fact that today, ladies and gentlemen, is the 15th anniversary of the North American version of The Office.
Wow.
I cannot wrap my head around the fact that it's been 15 years since that show debuted. And I don't know, Rob, that if in the last 15 years there has been a more, number one, if there's been a better, number two, if there's been a more important, or number three, if there's been a more influential sitcom, although it was very unique in its style, sitcom than The Office. I mean, just looking at this image right now, we all know these characters. We know all of them. We can name them all. We can look at every single one of the characters on this screen and name each and every one of them. And we can each of us think probably of about 20 or 30 different episodes that we loved with each one of those characters. And you know what's funny? When I was one of those guys that went, when The Office was on, I didn't even bother with the first season at first because I'm like, well, it's never going to be as good as the British version of The Office, right? And, you know, the first season of The Office was good. The first season of the North American Office was good, but it wasn't what it was going to become. And I remember, Rob, I think it might have been after season 3 that I shocked and disturbed my friends when I told them, I think I like the North American version better than the British version. And they looked at me agog and aghast. Like, what? How can you say such blasphemy? But as the show went on, I became more and more believing in that. And it kind of set up other all-time great shows. Like, look how long we just... Modern Family is coming to the end of its run. But that was completely influenced by the style of The Office. Parks and Rec is another show that I actually personally consider one of the greatest sitcoms of all time. I love that show. Obviously, completely influenced by The Office and many, many others. That's What She Said became a household phrase because of The Office. It had been around already, but it became a household phrase because of The Office. Rob, let me ask you, when you think about The Office, do you have a favorite episode or two or a favorite moment of The Office? Something that when you think of The Office, your mind instantly goes to and that you think of?
John, I've never seen an episode.
Oh, that's right. I remember you saying that once to me before, that you had never seen an episode of The Office.
Now, when I say this, I've seen a lot of famous clips on YouTube. I've seen routines. I was watching one 2 days ago where Steve Carell opens the window. It was a famous, I don't remember what it was, but I've watched lots of clips over the years, but I've never sat down. I'm going to admit something to all of you. I was just not a sitcom guy. I haven't seen an episode of Friends, have not seen a full episode of Seinfeld. And this is not something I'm necessarily proud of. I just was not a sitcom guy. And I didn't watch, there was just a time where I fell out of watching TV except for any science fiction show that was on television, like Babylon 5 or Deep Space Nine or Voyager or something. That was it, because I just got so busy. I was never home when those shows were on television, and I never watched them. And so now it's the kind of thing where Elizabeth looks at me all the time going, what? So I've never seen, and she's like, how can you not? I'm like, I'm the episode where the guy hasn't seen Friends. That's me.
You know what I think? I think one of these days soon, I think you should do a full body, sanitization. Come over into my fully sanitized environment. Sit down. We should do like a live watch along of you watching 2 or 3 episodes of The Office.
Well, what would be if you curated them? And you should make it the John Campea top 10, because that would only take, they're only half an hour, right?
Yeah. So about 22 minutes an episode. Yeah.
So it's only like 3 hours, maybe 4 hours. We should sit down and do the John Campea, the Office top 10 and do a countdown from 10 to 1, and you curate, and we'll do it. I would be so up for that. I'll come to your house, total live stream it, and that'll be fun. So there'll be the element of surprise, and you can even release the episodes to the internet the day of, so people could actually watch along with us. We could do that. That Netflix, maybe it's not on Netflix anymore yet or something.
The Netflix party, yeah, we were supposed to do a Netflix party yesterday, but they're having some technical problems with something. But yeah, we should do it via Netflix party. That, so the whole office can just follow along with us. Yeah. I like it. Anyway, guys, let me ask you, what are some of your favorite memories of The Office? It is absolutely one of the greatest and one of the most important and influential sitcoms in American television history. It's absolutely fantastic. What are some of your favorite episodes? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, with that down and out of the way, let's now move on to our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here in the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Brandon, who writes, "Hey, John, I hope you guys are doing well in quarantine. Doing well so far, Brandon, thank you. So, aside from Sony's upcoming Marvel projects, there have been rumors about many other characters getting solo movies. Kraven, Silk, Spider-Verse spinoff, etc. My question is, do you think Sony is filling their plate too much too fast with Spider-Man-centric ideas?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, listen, over the last couple of years, we have heard a lot of rumors and reports about, we're going to get I can't remember, Rob, what was the name of the one with Sable, and it was going to have... the silver and black? Yeah, with silver and black. So they were going to do silver and black. We've heard Kraven mentioned. We've heard, the Widow one. We've heard about, Silk Spider. We've heard a Spider-Gwen standalone stuff. We've heard about a lot of different things. It can create the illusion, I think, that maybe Sony is getting a little bit ahead of themselves and maybe trying to bite off a little bit too much at once. However, I think there are two things to keep in mind with that. The first thing that we got to keep in mind with that is that Sony has never come out and said, we're doing this and we're doing this and we're doing this, we're doing this. I think Silver and Black they may have, and then they did about face, but that was about 3 years ago or something like that. But a lot of the rumors that have been lately hasn't actually been Sony saying they're doing it. It's been all these reports coming out that they were doing it. That's one thing. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that Sony needs to plan ahead, right? Like, when Kevin Feige comes out and says, I've got the next 5 years planned, everybody, rightfully so, everybody stands and applauds. All right, Kevin Feige isn't just being reactionary. He's planning what's going to happen. He knows what's going to happen next year, the year after that, the year after that, the year after that. He's planning this all out. That means he's probably got about 20 projects in the pipe at that point, right? 20, 30, if you want to count like the Disney Plus stuff that he's going on. And rightfully so, we stand and applaud and say, that's awesome. He's looking ahead. He's planning ahead. He's going to be prepared. Well, we should expect no less from Sony as well. Sony, if they're going to do these movies, they should be planning ahead. They should not just be thinking about, okay, well, let's wait and see how Morbius does, and then we'll decide what to do next. No, they've already started. They got Venom down. They're doing Morbius now. They've got to start thinking ahead, and they have to start having their plans in place so that once Morbius hits or misses, they know exactly what they're doing. They know what their plan A is. They know what their plan B is. So when you combine those two things, Rob, looking at, number one, we haven't heard anything official from Sony yet from themselves. Number two, shouldn't we expect them to be planning ahead and know what they want to be doing in the next little while? I honestly don't feel like Sony's done anything in the realm of biting off more they can chew. Between Spider-Verse, Venom, and Morbius, that's 3 films in the last 3 years, whereas we're going to get like 6 or 7 different properties from Marvel in the next year and a half or two. So, I mean, honestly, I don't see them biting off more than chew. I don't think they're getting ahead of themselves right now, but maybe there's another way of looking at it. Rob, you look at this. How do you think?
Well, I mean, it all comes down to what's making money. What are people going to see? And while it didn't burn up the box office charts, I think Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I mean, I can't think of a more beloved movie. People love that movie. It won an Academy Award. And Spider-Man Far From Home did really well. Venom overperformed, exceeding everyone's expectations. Morbius, I don't know. To me, it looks really right up my alley. I can't wait to see it. Venom 2 with Carnage, I want to see that. As long as they've got great movies in the pipeline that are entertaining, that people are going to see, that do justice to the property, it doesn't matter how many movies you make. If they're still being enjoyed by your audience, how many is too many? Well, until somebody stops going, I see that they're just going to keep making these films and people are going to continue to love them as long as they're good. And isn't that what we all want?
I agree. And you know what? And it still makes people mad when I say this, but it's got to be said because I believe from my subjective opinion point of view, I believe this is true. And I don't mean to ruffle the feathers of my friends who are big Marvel fans. I myself am a big Marvel fan, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the reality is, yes, while you can make the argument that the one or two worst Spider-Man movies made have been Sony movies, the two best Spider-Man movies made have been Sony movies. Hey, I like Homecoming very, very much. And I like Far From Home very, very much. But to me, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse beats them both. And to me, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 beats them both. And I love those films. I do. So I've got, some might say naive, and maybe so. But I've got a lot of faith and belief in Sony right now that they can do something great here. And maybe it'll turn out to be garbage, who knows. But if they can do with Morbius what they did with Venom, I'll be a happy camper. Question is, guys, what do you think about this? Do you think Sony's getting too far ahead of themselves right now? Do you say, well, wait a minute, they're only doing like an average one film a year? What do you think about it? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down and out of the way, let's go on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Greg Murdoch, who writes, I'm a new listener, and I am so happy you are helping us through this difficult time. Thanks so much, Greg. It's great for us, too. Believe me and Rob talk about how just doing the show is great for us during this time, helping keeping us sane, too. My question is, if you think that the effect of the COVID-19 will create a permanent scar on all of pop culture events, for example, going to the Comic-Cons, or a premiere of a blockbuster movie will never be the same because people will be nervous about being so close to each other. Comic-Cons can become very crowded. All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And listen, you're not wrong. Comic-Cons become very, very crowded. As a matter of fact, it has just become an accepted part of Comic-Con that when you go, and I'm not joking here, this is 100% serious, no hyperbole, not being facetious in the least. I remember, talking to friends of mine at other organizations and at whatever organizations I would be running at the time, whatever, when we would talk about things like Comic-Con, or we would talk about things like New York Comic-Con or whatever, one of the things that would come up in scheduling is, okay, so we've got Comic-Con from this to this, and then from the end of Comic-Con for about a week, we're probably going to be out a couple of people who are going to be sick. Honestly, because there became a phrase that became very well known, con crud. You've all heard of con crud. Everybody gets con crud because you're at these conventions and you're standing shoulder to shoulder, people crammed in lines for hours at a time. It is just something a lot of people just assume that when they go to Comic-Con, they're going to get sick for a bit because that's kind of what happens. So I don't think this is a new thing. I don't think this is a new thing. So it's something that people who go to these sorts of things are already aware of. I mean, this isn't anything new. We know you can get sick if you can go to things. This is nothing new. It is an interesting question about once this whole thing gets behind us, how are people going to react and respond to a new world in which we've had the coronavirus? Personally, I think we as a culture are pretty resilient. And I think what you're going to see, and it's difficult to compare what's happening right now to other, let's say, paradigm shifting events, right? Other paradigm shifting events. There's no true comparison. But when you look back through our history at paradigm shifting events like, say, 9/11 or other paradigm shifting kinds of events, it is understandable that while we're in the midst of those things, we will say to ourselves, things are never going to be the same again. But what happens is eventually the resiliency of our culture starts to shine through. Things did get back to normal. Yes, there are some things that changed, but for the most part, things got back to normal. And I believe the same is true of this. It might make us more aware of certain things. It might make us a little bit more precautious. Maybe it'll make us a little more cautious to the degree we should have already been a little bit cautious. Like, I remember watching videos going into Comic-Con, people saying, guys, please bring hand sanitizer with you. Please change your fucking clothes from day 1 to day 4. Please take a shower before you go to the con, because we've all been in line at a Comic-Con where clearly this dude has not showered since he got to San Diego. And maybe something like this might be really good for kids, but I do see us getting back to normal. And I honestly think that once this is behind us, however long it takes to get behind us, I think with the exception of those little behavioral changes, making sure we as people wash our hands, which we should have been doing anyway, making sure that when we're going to big events, we carry some hand sanitizer, which we should have been doing anyway, making sure we have clean clothes, which we should have been doing anyway. Aside from that, Rob, I actually think once this is behind us, however long that takes, I believe I see us getting back to normal. So yeah, maybe not this Comic-Con, because even if everything gets behind us fairly quickly, I think a lot of people would have already not made plans to travel and all that kind of stuff. I think it's definitely going to have an effect on this year's Comic-Con. Very little doubt about that. How big or small of an impact, I'm not sure, but there will definitely be an impact there. But long term, I see us doing what we have always done. We become resilient. We make minor adjustments to how we operate as we should, and then we move forward. And I think that's what'll happen. But Rob, maybe I'm being admittedly, maybe I'm being over a little simplistic about this. How do you see things shaking out once we get this behind us?
Well, I think you're right. Look, humanity has been very resilient. I mean, hell, we survived the Black Death. We survived World War II. We've survived all manner of atrocities. Everybody's done something bad to everybody if you go back far enough in history, and we keep going. And these are inevitability. These things are inevitable as we encroach upon natural habitats, as the developed world encroaches on the natural world. This is going to happen again. It's happened before. We've seen emergent pathogens rage across the planet before, and we learn and we move forward. And life is finite, John, and there's no reason that we should spend our lives cowering in fear or terror from things like this, because we are resilient, and that's what evolution is. And what it does teach us, hopefully, is to be a little bit smarter and a little bit more aware. And that's what we should take from all of these events, and we get to move forward. And Comic-Con will come back. I mean, I don't want to live in a world. Look, I'm not in any hurry to not live responsibly, but I also don't want to live in a world where I can't go to a Comic-Con. I won't go to a Comic-Con, obviously, now at this moment. But if cases plateau and they begin to drop, as we've seen in China and South Korea, we will get back to normal. And we will be a little smarter, and we will be a little bit more self-aware and aware of our fellow citizens. And we will be able to return to the theaters and return to Comic-Con and return to the lives that are rich, that are enjoyable. And for the time being, I would say that, look at this time. If you're sequestered away, spend some time with family. Call people on the phone you haven't talked to in a while. Maybe an old friend you haven't seen. Call them up for no reason at all and just say, hey, man, I was thinking about the time we did such and such. People love to hear from other people. And right now is a time we shouldn't look at it as some kind of a setback or a hindrance. I mean, I understand for me, our incomes might be curtailed, and that's a bummer. But I would say use this time and reflect or reach out or do whatever, and we will be back. And I keep thinking about Tina Turner and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. we will rebuild. And after Bartertown gets wrecked, and I mean that's John. That's what I think about movie characters giving me the inspiration to move forward.
And you know what? I decided to make that. I thought this was a really interesting question, so I decided to make that the topic of today's question of the day. I wanted to ask you guys, like, how do you think we're going to get back to normal here? And at what pace? So I asked you guys, if the crisis is behind us by July, do you think most people will still avoid movies and events like Comic-Con, or will they be anxious to get back to normal and attend those events? And right now, 19.8% of you are saying people are still going to avoid those events. People are going to avoid Comic-Con. They're going to avoid movies, stuff like that. 29.7% of you are saying we're instantly going to go back out and we're going to right back to it. And about 50% of you guys are saying it'll be 50-50. Like there's going to be probably a lot will go to things, but they may not go to as many things at first. And I think that's probably a pretty balanced response to that. So almost 4,000 of you guys have voted on that. Again, 19.8% of you are saying people are going to avoid everything, even in July, if everything's behind us. Almost 30% of you saying, nope, everybody's going to return. And about 50% of you saying, it'll be about 50-50. They'll go to some things. They may not go to a lot of other things. Question is, guys, what do you think is going to be the response if like something like this is, say, behind us come July, which we don't know that it will be at this point, but jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down and out of the way, let's move on to our third main topic today. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Eric the Red. And Eric the Red writes, "Hey, John, I know you said earlier that the studios also have to be careful about pissing off the theaters. This is true. They do. Did you see the head of the Movie Theaters Union just threw down the gauntlet on Universal and threatening them for putting Trolls 2 out on DVD and passing the movie theaters? It's the most aggressive thing I've ever heard or said between the studios and the theaters. It is." Let's read that last part again, because I think he's absolutely right. "It is the most aggressive thing I've ever heard or said between the theaters." And you know what? You are absolutely right. I have never heard publicly real aggressive lashing out between studios and theaters like I just did. And we'll get to that in a second. Now, we have seen there has been a lot of tension between studios and theaters, but usually it's kept behind the scenes more. They say, we look forward to working with our partners, when behind the scenes, like, you son of a, maybe. But we just saw something here that is unlike anything I've really seen before when it comes to this tenuous relationship between studios and theaters. For those of you who need a little background, this is what we're talking about. In the midst of a lot of movies going straight to video, because they had already started their theatrical run and now theaters were closed, they had nothing they can do. So movies like Onward, movies like The Hunt, and a couple of others have made that move. Now, I told you guys before that I spoke to somebody in the theater system who told me that the theaters have no objection to those movies doing that. But the one big different thing, though, was Trolls World Tour, or Trolls 2, the animated film. They did not have their theatrical run yet, and it wasn't scheduled to start until April. And they became the first movie and only movie to say, we're going to skip our theatrical dates and we're just going to go straight to VOD. Now, the head of the North American Theater Owners, now that's NATO, not the same NATO as in the UN, but NATO, the North American Theater Owners, he was being interviewed and he made some incredibly stark comments that it is behooving on us to look at in some detail here. Now, first, his name is John Fithian. And first they asked him, hey, do you and the theater owners, were you upset? Do you have any problems with, are you upset at all that a lot of these studios are putting their movies straight to VOD? Not talking about Trolls. And this is what he said. He said exactly what I was told, actually. He said this: no, I am not bothered by it. And here's why. For those distributors who already had movies released in theaters that were playing when we had to shut down, we fully understand that they would need to accelerate their home releases. They had already put those movies in cinemas and spent all the money, by the way, to market those films and all that kind of stuff, and they're in a tight spot. They had already put those movies in cinemas, but cinemas had to shut down. So they made those faster moves to the home to try to monetize those movies and to give people something to watch at home during the crisis. So the first thing to point out here is these guys had no problem. These guys had no problem of, the movie theaters, I should say, had absolutely no problem with the studios taking these movies that were already in theaters, that they had spent all their marketing money on, they had no other choice, blah, blah, blah. They had no problem with it. The theaters are like, yeah, we get it. It screws us over a little bit, but we're all getting screwed over a little bit. And the studios are going to lose money on this too. They're just trying to lose a little bit of less money right now. So the theaters were like, we get it. We understand, no problem. No skin off our nose. However, the Trolls 2 situation was different for them. And this is where John Fithian becomes a little bit more aggressive in his communication. Listen to this. With the exception of Universal, every studio has gone overboard to reassure exhibitors. Remember, exhibitors is the movie theaters, because he uses the term exhibitors a lot. Exhibitors is the movie theaters. Remember this. With the exception of Universal, every studio has gone overboard to reassure theaters that the theatrical model works for them, and they look forward to releasing their movies theatrically once the virus is done. And every one of those studios called their theatrical partners and talked through their plans for delayed release before they announced them. So you're saying, guess what? When they decided to move Black Widow, Disney called the theaters and said, we need to talk through this with you. We're thinking about bumping the release date. So that's what he's saying. Every one of those studios called their exhibition partners and they talked through their plans for delayed release before they announced them. Only Universal, sorry, I've been talking a lot. Only Universal on Trolls undermined the theatrical model. And Universal told no exhibitor about their plans on Trolls until approximately 20 minutes before their announcement. Get that again. This is their business partner. Whereas every other studio called the theaters to talk through their plans, Universal never called the theaters, never called their exhibition partners to tell them about their plans with Trolls until approximately 20 minutes before their announcement. Theaters, exhibitors, we know who our partners are. Now, that's already fighting words. Those are already fighting words. And you would think, whew, that is harsh. Wow, John, you were right. That's harsh. Oh, that's not even the worst of it. We're not even to the good part yet. So strap in, kids. Here comes the good part. Only Universal, John Fithian continues to say, and only on Trolls did one studio skip the theatrical model and go straight to the home. Universal continues to advertise to consumers that Trolls will be released simultaneously to theaters and the home on April 10th. And they are lying to consumers. Universal knows that theaters will still be closed on April 10th, so unlike every other distributor who must simply delay their release for that time period, but still understands that theatrical release is essential to their business model, Universal on Trolls didn't make that decision. Exhibitors, theaters, will not forget this. Get those last words. We will not forget this. Listen, when it comes to making decisions in life, there's very, very rarely in our lives a choice, particularly in business, where you have a choice to make where the one choice is obvious, it's nothing but upside, and the other choice is nothing but downside, therefore it becomes clear and obvious. In life, the big decisions we have to make in life, there will be pros and cons to every decision we have to make. And we need, as individuals, or sometimes as businesses and companies, we need to weigh out those pros and cons, right? And then we need, after weighing out the pros and cons of each potential option, we need to make a decision that we feel is best for us. Understanding, though, that when we make the decision, we're going to have to take the cons that come along with that decision as well. Now, let me say this. I understand that Universal was in such a position where they had to make a decision. We can either go and do our theatrical run. The problem with that is, right now, our movie was already tracking, like remember this is important, Trolls 2 World Tour was already tracking to drop more than 50% from the opening weekend of the first Trolls. And that's even before the coronavirus stuff started happening. The tracking on Trolls 2 was that it was going to take more than a 50% drop from the opening weekend numbers of the first Trolls. So they were already looking at a flop. Compound that with the fact that they had already put some of their marketing money up. So they had already done some marketing. So they had already invested money in their marketing. And they're thinking, if we push this release date, that marketing money that we spent is just gone. That's just, bye-bye. That money's just gone. If we push our release date, that marketing money is gone. So we're already looking at a flop. If we push our release date, we're going to lose what marketing money we've already spent. And we feel like if we push later into the year, that our movie will get trounced even more. So they said, okay, so the advantages for us, if we do a straight to VOD release, is we get to take advantage of that marketing money we already spent. We get to have an area of release date that we can take advantage of. We might get a few more VODs than we would have normally with kids being at home. The downside is we're going to be betraying our exhibitor partners who have always been there for us. When we needed to take a huge amount of the movie ticket price and leave the theaters with almost nothing, the theaters did it. When we wanted to shrink the theatrical window, the amount of time that a movie is supposed to stay in theaters before it gets released on DVD, when we wanted to shrink it, the theaters did it. The theaters have always been there for us. When we want to put out Fast and Furious to make $1 billion around the world, the movie theaters have been there. When we wanted our Fast and the Furious movie or our Jurassic World movie to play on their IMAX screens and to play on their biggest screens, they did it. Whenever we've needed them, they've been there for us. And the drawback right now, if we skip them, is we'll take advantage of our marketing money, but we'll be screwing over our exhibitor partners who have always been there for us and have been responsible for us making all the money that we've made. Every other studio recognizes this relationship. Every other studio understands that, the theaters have always been there for us. Whenever we've needed something, they've been there for us. They maintain their theaters. They maintain their screens. They make the movie-going experiences that makes us billions and billions and billions of dollars. And every other studio has stepped up and said, well, we tried to put our movie in theaters. It was in there for a week, but now we got to put onto video on demand, and the theaters have gone, we understand. And now they've gone, well, Black Widow, we need to just push the release date because we know we're going to make all of our money in there. And they've been careful, and they talk to their partners, and they maintain that relationship. But Universal had to make a choice for what was right for them, If they had just pushed, Rob, here's the thing. If they had just pushed the release date for Trolls 2, they were going to take a little bit of damage. Because, like we said, this movie was already going to be a flop. It just already was. The numbers were already there. All those, with it being a flop, you can't afford to waste those marketing dollars that they already spent. And maybe by doing this, they can recoup a little bit. But Rob, as in anything in life, when you make a choice, you have to understand there's going to be a downside and there's going to be repercussions. Because here it comes. John Fithian said, we're not going to forget this. We're not going to forget this, Universal. When we need you, we've always been there when you've needed us. And now when we, the movie theater industry, need you, you're saying, fuck off. We're not going to forget that. And here's where it's going to hit them, Rob. This is where it's going to hit them. And if I had been in that boardroom, and if I had been, one of the inner circle at Universal, and they were debating this, and they said, should we put this thing directly to VOD, or should we put this thing, keep it in theaters, or should we skip the theaters? And they turned to me and said, well, Campea, you're new here, but what do you think? This is exactly what I would say. Guys, if we keep this thing in theaters, we may take a short-term loss. But if we turn our backs on the theaters now, when every other studio, Marvel, Disney, Warner Brothers, Lionsgate, Paramount, all of them, when all the rest of them are standing shoulder to shoulder with them in this time, we are going to suffer consequences of this decision for years to come. Because here's what's going to happen, Rob. Here's what's going to happen. They are going to get their revenge on Universal, and we're never going to see it in news headlines. But I will tell you exactly how their retribution will come. The theaters will go, oh, you got a new Fast and Furious movie coming out? Oh, that's cool. You want it on 3,000 screens? Oh, that's cool. We can make room for 2,200 screens. Oh, you've got a new Jurassic World movie coming out, and you want it on our Prime theaters? Oh, that's nice. Oh, would you look at that? Our Prime theaters are already booked up. What do you mean they're booked up? I see empty slots. Oh, no, it's booked up. Sorry about that. Booked up. This is what's going to happen, Rob. Theaters, little bit by little bit, over the next 5 years, are going to take their revenge on Universal for this. And it's never going to be in any headlines. We're never going to see a Hollywood Reporter story about it. We're never going to see Variety write an article about it. But it's going to be sliver by sliver. It's going to be a stabbing with 1,000 slivers over the next 5 years. And theaters are just going to go, yeah, hey, remember when we needed you? Remember when we needed you? We've always been there for you. Remember when we needed you? We need it the other way around. And you said, screw off, and you spit on our faces, and you went off to save a couple of extra shekels. Well, guess what? It's going to cost you a lot more than that long term. And when 50, we have never seen, Rob, this language, we have never seen this language of a relationship between a studio and the exhibitors where one of them says to the others, we're not going to forget this. We are not going to forget this. And every other studio right now is like smiling because they know they're going to get some of their projects are going to have the better theater selections. They know they're going to get some of the more better exhibitor deals now and all this kind of stuff because Universal just got themselves, they just lost their seat at the table. And it's going to be slow and it's going to be little bit by little bit. But I'm telling you, Rob, Universal is going to be suffering the consequences of this decision for the next 5 years. And I don't blame the theaters at all. Now, I'm normally a studio guy. But this was bad business. This was a bad decision. And I fully understand Universal needs to make decisions that were best for them and all that kind of stuff, but they just should have sucked up this one loss and understand it's better for our industry as a whole if we all work together. It's just healthier and better for our business as a whole if we just work together on this. And Rob, I just think you and I are never going to see with our eyeballs the retribution that the theaters get, but believe it, it's going to happen. And Universal's not going to be happy about it. But anyway, Rob, you know, I called you yesterday when I first read this interview. I'm like, have you seen this interview? And I called Rob up. And anyway, you've had about 24 hours now to think on it and look on it and all this kind of stuff. What's your reaction to it right now?
Well, I think, you covered a lot of it, but I would say, again, it all comes to money. And whether they diminish the number of screens that Universal has access to, or I tend to think they'll do something a little different. They'll just charge them more. They'll make the split between the studio and the movie theater a little higher. And Universal's going to say, but we have Jurassic World Dominion coming out. And they're like, yes, and we can't wait to play it. But, we want a 60-40 split for us. They're gonna get them some way, and Universal's gonna want those, and they're gonna have to. Here's the thing, it's never a good time to exploit a situation like this for financial gain on one side. And the thing is, the movie theaters and the studios are in the same ecosystem. They need one another. That's why you're not seeing Warner Brothers release Wonder Woman 84 directly to VOD. They need it to go to theaters. They need to get that money back. And for Universal to have not made those calls, that's all it took. Universal could have made some calls. The theaters would have understood. The theaters would have said, you know what? We know it's time, like we know what's going on. We appreciate you letting us know that you consulted with us as you should. But for them to do this to the theater owners who have been nothing if not receptive to what the studios have been doing, it's kicking them when they're down. And why would you do that? Why would you do that to a symbiotic partner that you need to make your business work? It really was a slap in the face to to the people the studios need. And I can understand why it was said that we will not forget this, because when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and you also see people's true colors. And I think it was a really bad move, really tone deaf, really brain dead on the part of Universal. It's arrogant in the extreme. And, all the people, imagine if you're just a kid, it was your first job, you've been there for a couple of months, and suddenly this happens and the theater's shut down, and you hear Universal is basically saying, you know what, kid? We don't care about you or your job. We don't care about the young people that are working at movie theaters because they love the movies and it might be their first job or their second job or whatever. We just don't care about you. We're just going to do what we need to do and screw all you guys. And that's what they said. And that's not what you need in this kind of a crisis. You need all hands on deck. You need everybody helping everybody else out, because we're all part of the same community. We're all part of the same planet. We're all part of the same country. And movie going, you need the people that supply and the people that distribute. It's a no-brainer. And for them to have done this, I think a little payback is in order. I don't think it is a business. It's not show friends, John. It's show business. But you know what? You got to be friendly with your business partners to do good business, and Universal was not.
Rob, you bring up a great point, which is one of the things. This is a situation where Universal could have had their cake and ate it too. If they had done exactly what you just, and I think the point you made is one of the most astute here, is that if they had decided that the leadership of Universal had gotten a hold of NATO, had gotten a hold of the North American Theaters Organization, say, hey, listen, can we schedule a conference call for Tuesday? And then spend all day Tuesday saying, listen, we are having some real struggles with our Trolls project. And present to them, here's the numbers we're looking at. We're going to take a bath on this, but we think we might be able to take a little bit less of a bath if we did a straight VOD. And we're thinking about that here, but we wanted to be in communication with you. And they spent 2 or 3 days having some hard conversation meetings with the theaters. I bet that probably by the end of it, even if the theaters weren't happy with Universal going to VOD, they probably would have felt like, hey, you still treated us like a partner, not 20 minutes before we make a public announcement and lying to the consumers and saying, oh, this is going to be in theaters and on VOD. The theaters aren't still going to be open yet. If they had done that and made the theaters still feel like a partner, the theaters would have grumbled, but they probably would have accepted it. And something like this, to treat your partner like this, when all the other studios, when Kevin Feige, when Alan Horn, when all the heads of Sony and Paramount know well enough that we need this relationship for all of us to survive, and they treat them like partner, it could have been avoided, dude. It could have been. And here's the other thing. When this is done, when this COVID-19 thing is behind us, the theaters are going to be, the whole industry is going to be in recovery mode. And they're going to need as many great, high profile, attract to the audience kind of movies available. And Universal just pulled one off the table. And they're hurting. So by doing that, they're hurting the whole industry.
Beyond that, John, they're going to need some kind of concessions from the studio end. Like, Universal could have said, hey, We'll for our next big release, whether it's Fast and the Furious, well, that's not until April 2021 now, but whatever the next big film is, we'll give you 5% more of a split for our next big tentpole movie. We're willing to offer you some kind of a monetary concession that shows how much we appreciate you understanding what we need to do right now for our business while your businesses are entirely shuttered. So maybe we'll help you make it up on the back end. That's what good business partners do. And the theaters, they didn't get that from Universal. And, Universal, that would have gone. Can you imagine if Universal said, look, we know what this is going to be, but for our next big tentpole, we're willing to give you a 5%, our split between what we get and what you get is 5% more on your side because we know that your businesses are hurting right now. I mean, we need your
business for us to do good business.
Right, exactly. And it's like that's what you do in this kind of a crisis. And it's just it's incredible to see, now we're seeing this played out on the national stage now when people are saying, oh, you know what? We need to get back to work. So, we'll get rid of the quarantine in a couple of weeks. America's got to reopen. And you're like, oh, okay, so that's how it is. We're seeing how we've seen in other countries now how this virus has been plateauing, and now the bell curve is going down in terms of outbreaks. Wuhan in China is going to be open after a 2-month quarantine. There's now things that are being looked at. This is not the end of the world. This is a crisis that is going to pass. And you know what? You remember what your friends do when things are, that's why marriage is through sickness and in health. And it's when things aren't the greatest where you see how people's true colors come out. And it's just disappointing, man. It's disappointing.
Well, we've talked about this a lot, and I got a feeling we'll probably talk about this more because this is this to me is a significant thing. Anyway, guys, question is, you've seen this. What are your thoughts on all this? What are some stuff that maybe Rob and I are overlooking at this point? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With all that down out of the way, and before we go into our live questions, with so many of us kind of bunkering down at home, this has been a great time to get caught up on some classic and some lesser known movies that maybe didn't get the love in theaters that they deserved, or maybe have never really been on our radars. So Rob and I have been spending every day giving our recommendations of movies you can watch, stuff that you can watch at home. And Rob, you've already listed off some fabulous ones. So why don't you get things kicked off with us here today? What is your stuff to watch at home recommendation today?
Well, it's a science fiction movie that it's now little seen, but when I was growing up, it was something we talked about a lot. And it's George Roy Hill, the director of The Sting and the director of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The World According to Garp, amongst others, directed this adaptation right after he made Butch Cassidy of Kurt Vonnegut's novel SlaughterhouseFive, which was just released on Blu-ray by Arrow. And SlaughterhouseFive tells the story of a man named Billy Pilgrim, who was a POW in World War II. He'd been captured by the Germans and wound up in the city of Dresden when it was firebombed. And through the course of the plot, he is taken to the planet Tralfamadore by aliens, and he is put in basically a zoo, and he's allowed to relive his life. He becomes, as they say, unstuck in time. And he bounces between his experience in Germany and then his experiences after the war and growing old and having children and winding up in this alien zoo with Valerie Prine, Miss Tessmacher from Superman, who plays Montana Wildhack, a porn star. And they live in this alien zoo together and have a child as he keeps reliving his life. And I think it's a beautiful movie. I've always loved this movie. And it was great to get it on Blu-ray. And it's just a really compelling film. And it's kind of forgotten. There's a lot of great 70s science fiction films that people that don't see, things like Silent Running and movies like this. And it was great to see it again. The transfer is great. And I've always really liked this. And then, it didn't. George Roy Hill came off of Butch Cassidy, big hit. He made this, not such a big hit. And then he went on and he made The Sting. So a really interesting film. And I've always loved this film. So I'd be curious to hear what people think.
All right. So your recommendation today is SlaughterhouseFive. I like that one. All right, let me tell you what my recommendation here is today. Rob, there was a time not so long ago when Russell Crowe was considered like the big thing. He had won an Academy Award for Gladiator and all that kind of stuff. But it was glory that was short-lived because a bunch of his off-camera antics started to just sour people on Russell Crowe. He is still my favorite actor today. He is still my favorite actor. I just think he's an incredible performer. But I love Russell Crowe. But he had a movie come out around that time, about when people were starting to get a little tired of Russell Crowe, a little sour on him because of all the off-camera antics. But he put out a bit of a period piece. It's a mix between a period piece and a sports film and an underdog story. And it was simply, to me, one of the best films of the year in 2005. The movie is Cinderella Man. Cinderella Man, that the studios, I don't remember having ever seen this before, Rob. The movie that the studios were so confident in that they actually offered a money-back guarantee. I had never seen it happen, and I don't recall ever seeing it happen since. But they were like, if you go see Cinderella Man and you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. Never seen that happen before, never seen it since. It had a struggling opening weekend. Not a ton of people went to go see it. And then the studios kind of announced, hey, well, go see it and money back guarantee sort of thing, because they believed in their movie so much. Russell Crowe should have gotten an Academy Award nomination for this, but like I said, everybody was just sour on Russell Crowe at this point. Paul Giamatti did get an Academy Award nomination for this. And by the way, you could make an argument that Renee Zellweger, who plays Russell Crowe's wife in it, that maybe she should have gotten an Academy Award nomination too. This is a movie that is filled with heart, humanity. The relationships are incredible. It is one of the great underdog stories that you've ever seen, based on a true story. The performances are completely top-notch. I thought this was a film that should have been nominated for Best Picture. I definitely thought Russell Crowe should have been nominated for Best Actor in this. This is just flat out an extraordinary movie. It is absolutely an extraordinary movie that I love with every fiber of my being. And nobody, or at least very, very few people, gave it a shot for multiple different reasons, but they didn't do it. It's going to be celebrating its 15th anniversary here in a couple of months. Rob, to me, Cinderella Man is just an absolute underappreciated gem of a film. And my recommendation to you guys, if you like underdog stories or sports stories or just great movies at all, one good one to get caught up on, I believe, this week is going to be Cinderella Man. Rob, did you ever have a chance to watch Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe?
Dude, this wonderful, wonderful film. I mean, like you, after I was a huge fan of Russell Crowe even before Gladiator, but Gladiator, dude, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. I can't get me enough Maximus Decimus Meridius. And after that, I mean, whether he was doing The Insider for Michael Mann or whether he was doing Cinderella Man, which is, Cinderella Man's it's based on a true story, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is.
Yeah. And I loved it. I mean, because to me, the 1-2 punch of like A Beautiful Mind and Cinderella's story, it was, and he did The Insider. Like, he was the king of true story biopic things, and I'd like to believe Gladiator's a true story too. But I think that I love Russell Crowe, and I continue to love Russell Crowe.
All right, guys. Well, listen, as always, jump down. Let us know what you think. If you're one of those people that have seen either Slaughterhouse-Five or Cinderella Man, jump down in the comments. Let us know what you think. And as always, guys, help out your fellow film fans that are kind of sequestered at home at the moment. Leave your recommendations about what people should go. Maybe some of those underappreciated gems that you know about that you think more people should watch. Now's a good time to do that. Jump into the comment section below and leave your recommendations there. Okay, guys. With all that down and out of the way, we're now going to get on to our live questions. But before we do, as Rob and I often do, we're going to take a quick 4-minute break here, rest the vocal cords, stretch our legs, refill our drinks, all that good stuff. So hang tight with us, guys. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. folks, and we are back. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence as we took a little bit of a break there. And now let's jump in and get right to your live questions. And we're going to get things started off here with Initial D's, who writes, "Hey, John, while I didn't like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, when I saw it in theaters during the end credits, there was a QR code to something special. I did it, and it was a special hidden video highlighting the sinister stakes that was to come. I remember this. It was literally nowhere online, so I used a video downloader and uploaded it to my YouTube. Of course, Sony claimed it immediately, but that video has gotten me 456 subscribers in almost 5 years. I still get a follower here and there from it and comments regularly. It has 692,000 views, definitely my most viewed video. While I don't reap monetary benefits, it has gotten me a small following for doing absolutely nothing. I think a good start if I wanted to get into being a YouTuber. No question here." Well, you know, it's funny. When I went to, here's the interesting thing about that. The video has 692,000 views, right? And this is just leading into an interesting discussion, but you got 456 subscribers from it, right? If I have a video that's 962,000, I'm getting way more than 456 views. So what's with it? I remember, Initial, when I went, Rob, when I first was going over to Collider, and Collider, it was owned by Complex at the time. And Complex was trying to lure me to come over there. I had left AMC. Complex was trying to get me to come over there and do this Collider thing. And as I looked at their YouTube channel at the time, they were getting some views, but I realized all their views was like movie clips. Like they would put like clips of like the biggest kills in Jurassic movies, right? And stuff like that. And
so creative.
Yes. There would be a lot of views on those videos because they would look at me and say, "Look how many views we got." And I said, "Okay, yeah, but I said, I haven't looked at your analytics yet, but let's open up your analytics. Do those views actually translate into new followers of the channel? Are you actually getting anything out of those views? Is there any benefit to those views? Are you creating any brand loyalty with those views? Are you creating any fan engagement with those views?" And then, so we went through it, and then we found this little video that was like an editorial video that they had that had like 2,000 views, right? Here's the difference. I said, on this Jurassic World video, you have like 0.03% engagement and conversion. On this like 2,000 view video, you've got like a 7% engagement conversion. This video actually did, this little 2,000 view video actually did like 300 times more for your channel than that video that had 500,000 views.
Yeah.
Because the 500,000 views didn't do anything for you. And it took me a while to get them to understand the difference between, because when I was coming over, they initially just wanted us to keep doing videos like that. And I was like, no, if I come over here, we're not just going to throw up clips from things. It doesn't do anything for us. And it was interesting. So I appreciate that you putting that in, Initial D's, because that's a great illustration about how you can get tons of videos, but if it's not the kind of video that creates engagement and creates identity and creates brand loyalty, then it's just empty views. They're meaningless. They have no thing in that. So, but hey, I understand the allure. We all get that. By the way, guys, I'm going to be doing a giveaway on the channel a little bit later today.
What?
Yep. A giveaway valued right now, let me look it up 1 second, valued at $17,000. Our giveaway today, this is of a bottle of hand sanitizer. See if there we go. Here we go, guys. Bottle of hand sanitizer thing. Now, for those of you who might be thinking, sweet, Campy, how'd you score that? This bottle is actually like 5 years old. We dug it out. We dug it out. It's actually like 5 years old. So we do not have
So
one.
it's aged like a nice bottle of scotch.
It's aged like a fine wine. It's aged like a fine wine. All right. Let's move on here from Initial D's. Next one up is also Initial D's, who writes, "My comment yesterday didn't convey right about the We Got This Covered article. I was joking because, of course," oh, I knew you were joking, dude. Absolutely. Because, of course, all production is halted. But the real kicker was their quote-unquote source being Charles Murphy of Murphy's Multiverse. It sounds like one of your made-up blogs. No, exactly, it is. Who's ever heard of that? it's like Gus's gas station fast reviews .fart, right? Like it's basically the same thing. So, but I totally got where you were going for on that initial, and you were absolutely right about that. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, greetings, John from Scarborough, Toronto. I love Scarborough, actually. Bean, I started to watch Paul T. Anderson movies, and I started watching Punch Drunk Love. And, oh, guys, please don't write like this. It's very difficult to read. Please don't write like this. Anyway, I really liked it. And so what should I watch next? And do you think he's one of the best of the decade? A lot of his art films aren't accessible to a lot, thanks. Well, see, that's the thing, Rob, right? About Paul Thomas Anderson is that, listen, he's got a lot of great movies.
Yes, he does.
But they do not appeal to everybody. They are definitely very stylized in many different ways, and they won't appeal to everyone. I don't know that I consider him one of the best of the decade. He's certainly one of my favorites. Like I certainly pay attention whenever he's got a new movie coming out. But yeah, I think because of exactly what you're pointing out, it's just, he's not, actually, you put it perfectly. He's not a really accessible. Those of us who like him, love him. But he's not going to appeal to a wide audience. I don't know. It's hard to say. How would you define it, Rob? What would you say to that?
Well, I don't know if his movies are, I would call them overtly fun. Like, I would say that Boogie Nights was, and I like Sydney, which was Hard Eight, his first film, and Magnolia was sort of very hit and miss for me. But man, I love getting immersed in his movies. I mean, There Will Be Blood. I loved Phantom Thread, dude. I was like,
oh, so did I.
I'm like, am I gonna like this movie? I love The Master, and Inherent Vice. He's a movie maker that's making movies about people first and foremost. And there's no special effects, even though he's a huge Star Wars fan. He's making movies about people and human nature and psychology, and he harks back to an age of film that just doesn't exist anymore. Obviously he's a fan of the movies. I grew up watching movies of the 70s and the 60s, the late 60s and 70s, and I feel that he's one of the only filmmakers in Hollywood that's working in the space that he's working in. He has a very independent sensibility, yet he makes movies with a studio sheen to them. And I find myself, even the movies I don't love Inherent Vice, but I find myself going back to these movies again and again and again and watching them and just letting them wash over me.
Yeah, and so to your question, what should you watch next? It's There Will Be Blood. It's got what I consider to be maybe the best male lead performance. I would put it into the argument of ever. I would
film, dude. Oh, yeah, it's so good.
I would put Daniel Day-Lewis's performance in that in the conversation for the discussion and debate of what it was the greatest male lead performance ever. I would actually put Daniel Day-Lewis in that argument for that one particular film. All right, we need to keep rolling here. Sam O'Neill writes, so Australia has closed its cinemas for 6 months. 6 months, really? Here in Brisbane, I mean, they could open it anytime they wanted, though. Here in Brisbane, the drive-in is quite common and loved. The good old Yatala drive-in has also been closed. I don't understand the closing of drive-ins. I mean, if you're in your car and you're basically, I mean, how much more social distancing can you get, really? So I don't understand the closing, but yeah, hey, listen, at least they're taking steps, dude. At least they're taking steps. Sam O'Neill also writes, when it reopens, I'm definitely going back ASAP and hitting up the Australian famous Yatala Pie Shop, then catching a back-to-back session of the beloved Yatala Drive-In. Love it. And I think there's going to be a lot of people, like, yeah, there's still going to be some nervousness about all the stuff that's going on, but I really do believe that when things open, the people's craving for normalcy and getting back that resiliency we're talking about, I think that's going to trump everything else. I really do. Zebo writes, so I bought Earth Girls Are Easy on DVD. I know Aaron loves that movie. In a 6-pack horror collection, but I don't know any of the other movies, such as Parents, 1989, Fido, 2006. Boy Eats Girl, 2005, Blood Diner in 1979, and Sundown Vampire in Retreat. Would you recommend any of these? Rob, I got to tell you, I don't know that I recognize the title of any of these movies. I'm going to guess that you own several of them in Steelbook somehow, some way.
I have to say, I cannot recommend Blood Diner. It's directed by a woman, if it's the same one, directed by a woman named Jackie Hong. And I saw it at a film festival, and I was a little disappointed by it. But Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat, if memory serves, was directed by Anthony Hickox, who directed Waxwork with Zach Galligan, who starred in Gremlins. And I liked that film. And I saw Parents in the theater, and it's amusing. But, Blood Diner is a movie. It's a comedy. It's a blood-drenched horror comedy, and some people do like it. So I would say 3 of those movies are definitely worth checking out. While I didn't like Blood Diner, I would check out Blood Diner, Parents, and Sundown, The Vampire in Retreat first. But I don't own any of those movies.
All right, next up, Willow writes, have you watched the miniseries Alias Grace with Sarah Gadon, Zachary Levi, David Cronenberg, Anna Paquin? It's a period piece based off of Margaret Atwood novel. I'd recommend it to anyone who likes The Handmaid's Tale. I've never even heard of it. Is this a new one, or is this?
It's on Netflix. It's on Netflix. Elizabeth watched it, and
is it a new one?
It. Yeah, and it's made by a bunch of good Canadian kids. No, it's like a year or 2 old, I think.
Okay, it's got Zach Levi in it. Okay, and I like Anna Paquin. All right, I might have to check that one out, Willow. Thank you for the recommendation, especially if it's got Zach Levi in there. All right, let's see. Timbula the Spider Monkey writes, went to work in Sydney today, but there was no work to do, so I sat in an office and watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Living Daylights, and Christine, making the best of a bad situation, I guess. I mean, and listen, and your boss can't even get mad at you, right? I mean, if there's literally nothing to do, but they see value in just keeping the lights on and keeping the business open, what else are you supposed to do? I mean, if there's everything done in the office you can do, why not use that time to catch up a little bit on some movies like that? And those are a couple of good ones, Timbula. Those are a couple of good ones. All right. Murray Reich writes, it's going to take a very long time for this virus to go away, especially where I live in New York. It has the most cases of all the states at over 21,000. It will be a while for AMC and Regal to reopen again, especially with their biggest theaters. Cash cow is Empire 25. Empire 25, by the way, is the most important movie theater in North America. It's the busiest movie theater in North America is the Empire 25 down there in town in Times Square in New York City. Here's what I would say though, Murray. I often have to catch myself when I'm thinking, hey, I think maybe in 6 weeks or blah, blah, blah. But I always say, but I mean, the reality is, I don't know. I'm just being optimistic, right? I think the reality is this is such an unknown situation to us. I don't know that any of us, including me, when I'm saying, I think 6 weeks, that's just probably me being overly optimistic, but I'm not basing that anything other than I feel in my giblies, like in 6 weeks, they're gonna, it's not really based in the giblies.
Yeah.
But honestly, none of us know. I mean, none of us know if we're going to, just be right back at it in 2 months. Nobody knows if it's going to be in a year. Nobody knows that it will be 6 months. I mean, we're in such unknown territory. In Warcraft, not World of Warcraft, but in like Warcraft or StarCraft, we call that fog of war, where you can't see what's on the other side of the map unless you're actually there. And that's what I feel like we're in right now. We're in kind of like a fog of war. So it may take that long. It may not. I mean, right now we just really don't know, but it's such uncharted territory for all of us. Murray also writes, I saw this video of a Bucks fan whose father couldn't stand that Brady got signed and was complaining what's wrong with Jameis Winston. 30 interceptions last year is what's wrong with Jameis Winston. Anyway, and we don't need an old fart playing, so he threw his jersey out the door. It's really funny. Yeah, you're going to feel differently when they win more games this coming year than they did last year. I mean, listen, I was all for Jameis Winston, too, when he came out of college, as far as his pure athletic ability goes. But, I mean, the numbers don't lie. Jameis Winston is not a winning quarterback. I'm sorry. Listen, I would sign him as a good, solid option B backup quarterback. I would. That if my starter goes down, I know I can get some productive reps out of Jameis Winston. I would still sign him, but he's not a starting quarterback in this league, I don't believe. His numbers show it. He just has never shown the type of poise or composure that a player who's been playing as long as he has now should be showing. So, I don't know. But again, remember, Tom Brady, he is the greatest of all time, but last year, he finally started showing his age last year. He was starting to show the 42 years. It started to show. And guess what? He's never going to be the same Tom Brady again. He's going to be good, but next year he's going to be 43 years old in the midst of that season, this next coming season. 43. So don't expect the Tom Brady of old. You're not going to get it, but he's still a better option than Jameis Winston. I think that's for sure. All right, release the breakdancing cut. Not going to happen, but does send in some support. Thank you for that release, the breakdancing cut. John S. writes, hey, John, I don't know if you have watched yet, but I'm previously recommended the foreign film Vitus about a piano prodigy that fakes a brain injury to stop playing and said it has heart. If you haven't yet, I would highly recommend that you do. Now's the perfect time. Rob, I do remember somebody recommending that once before. I have not seen it. Have you heard of this movie before? Have you ever had a chance to see it?
I haven't seen it. I don't know it. And if I knew it, I'd probably own it.
And you would probably not only have seen it, you've probably owned it already. All right, James L.H. writes to us, hey, John, firstly, I'm with Rob. Star Crash is a classic. You're not alone. Great John Barry score. But I need to mention Robert Vaughn's second Magnificent Seven outing, a.k.a. Battle Beyond the Stars with Space Cowboy. A great score by James Horner. James Cameron was art director. Was James Cameron the art director on that movie? I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
With George Peppard, right?
George Peppard played Cowboy, and Robert Vaughn played, I think his character's name was Gelt, or something like that. And there was Saint Exmond of the Valkyrie, played by Sybil Danning. I love Battle Beyond the Stars.
I had no idea James Cameron worked on that movie.
Well, yeah, it's funny. James Cameron, that was a Roger Corman film, and James Cameron worked on that. Then he went and worked on Galaxy of Terror. And he also did some visual effects work on Escape from New York.
That's amazing to me. Guys, if you should maybe, just for the hell of it, check that movie out sometime, because it doesn't hold up. Rob, I think even as a big fan of the movie, you'd say it doesn't hold up, but come on. I get a kick out of it, but it's not.
No, I mean, look, to me, it's very funny because I went and saw that movie in the theater. I saw it 4 times at the Crossroads Cinema in Bellevue, Washington. And it has a James Horner score, and it's like John Saxon plays Sador of the Malmori, and it has some cool ship design. I mean, the hero spaceship is designed like a woman's reproductive system. Her internal organs, it even has breasts on it, and the ship's name is Nell, and it has a female voice. And I believe Cameron actually designed that ship. And you have Richard Thomas playing Shad and Darlene Flugel as the femme fatale, the girlfriend. Yes, it is very cheap. It was done on the fly, man. And it was directed by Jimmy Murakami, who was a production designer. I think it's the only movie he directed. I think I know way too much more about this movie than I probably should. But I really like it. And as far as low-budget rip-offs of the Magnificent Seven go that take place in outer space, you can't go wrong if you know what you're going in for.
All you got to know, guys, is one of the main characters' names is Space Cowboy. That's all you need to know.
And it's so funny. He keeps saying, he goes, I'm from Earth. You ever hear of that? And nobody has. Nope.
Space Cowboy. All right, James L.H. also writes, another classic before Kylo Ren, before Dark Helmet. There was another Lord Grawl in the Humanoid starring Richard Kiel, a.k.a. Jaws. If there was ever a Star Wars parody, it was this. Even the director, whose name is Aldo Lado, was credited as George Lewis. Again, the Humanoid is one I have not heard of, Rob. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that you have.
Yes, I have. I mean, the Humanoid's I don't think it's great. But again, it harks back to these days when they were making these movies where you could see them in the theater. You could, at the Crossroads Cinema would play movies like this. I mean, it's like Starship Invasions, which I think is Canadian. And there's all kind of Italian horror and sci-fi films. And although I would see them all, but very few of them I would consider great.
All right.
Humanoid
next.
Oh, sorry. No, never mind. Go ahead.
All right. We got to keep moving here. Next one. Murray Reich writes, movie recommendation, North, 1994, directed by Rob Reiner, stars Elijah Wood, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Jason Alexander, Bruce Willis. I remember this movie when I was 4 and I liked it. Nice family film. I'm not familiar with North. Let me see if I can bring this up here.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
North, that's not the one. North, South, North. No, it's not even coming up. Oh, there it is. It's like 8 movies listed down. Did this one hit theaters, Rob? Did this one have a theatrical release? Because I'm looking
yeah.
at.
Really? Yeah. It's not. I didn't think it was great. I don't know why, but I always think about North and Barry Levinson's Toys, even though they have nothing at all to do with one another, as being watershed moments in the lives of those directors.
The movie, as I mentioned, it's a younger Elijah Wood. It's got Jason Alexander in it as well, so you've got a little bit of a Seinfeld reunion, playing the two parents. You got Julie Louis-Dreyfus and Jason Alexander both playing Elijah Wood's parents. And sick of the neglect he receives from his mom and dad, a young boy leaves home and travels the world in search of new parents. I have zero recollection of this movie. None. No recollection. That's interesting. Thanks for putting that out there, Murray. All right. Next one up. Comes to us from Orange Hand, who writes, you said the X-Men films don't do Cyclops justice. What's he like in the comics? I assume not just a generic boring leader. Some people think he is. Oh no, Cyclops is great in the comics.
Yeah.
He is honestly one of the reasons I got into X-Men comics was Cyclops, because there's something about, because like a lot of people, the character that got me into comics was Batman. And particularly when I first read, like when I was a younger kid, yeah, I picked up some comics because that's what we kids do. But it was when I read The Dark Knight Returns that really got me, that era of me being into comics was The Dark Knight Returns. And one of the things that I really loved about Cyclops was there was a very Batman-ish element to him, not in his darkness or anything like that, but other than his eye blast that can cut mountains in half, he was just a dude. He had the eye blast, and that was it. He was a leader, and he was very much on that level, just another guy. And he had to carry, that force of will had to carry him, and that relationship he had with Professor X. He is a great character in the comics, and there's a reason why Mr. Sinister has been after his bloodline for so much. He's a great character, and just the way they portrayed him in the movies, and I like the X-Men movies very much, but the one thing they usually dropped the ball on was they turned Cyclops into a very, very weak, inconsequential character, which is really unfortunate because they cast a great actor in James Marsden in the role. But Rob, like, how would you describe Cyclops?
Well, I've always thought of the X-Men as kind of the way I love Star Trek. I love the X-Men in comic books, if that makes any sense. They're a big team, and like you said, Cyclops was a dude, but he's a guy that stepped up. I saw him as the Kirk, of the X-Men, and he was a charismatic leader. First of all, anybody who's in love with a redhead, and I'm a fan of, because I love redheads. But he was a charismatic leader. He was a strong leader. He should have been he should have been more of the romantic lead. I mean, I think James Marsden is one of the great unsung actors in Hollywood. Whatever he's in, I mean, he'll be in Sonic the Hedgehog, he'll be in Westworld. He was fantastic, I thought, in Superman Returns, where I actually got to know him a little bit. I was always very impressed with him, and I thought that the X-Men films really let him down by not... I mean, obviously, Wolverine was the focus, but I would like to have seen him be much more charismatic, and his personality, he's a very charismatic guy in real life. He's very talented, he's very funny, he's just fun to be around, and I want to see a role where he is front and center, and that guy deserves to be a matinee idol. I mean, he really deserves to be one of our great leading men. And he's always been sort of relegated to these character roles or second fiddle or something. And I want one day to see the time when he steps up. But Cyclops is that kind of a guy to me. He was somebody to admire. He's a man of action, a man of principle. And I've never seen that. I hope in the MCU, and I think they'll do this, they'll make Cyclops the clear leader of the X-Men, the way he deserves to be.
I agree. By the way, and he could do comedy, like Anchorman 2. He was one of the few shining spots in Anchorman 2. There's just no reason James Marsden should not be a legit top shelf A-list star in Hollywood right now. He's got the acting chops. He's got the diversity. He's got the chiseled good looks. I just don't get it. I don't get it, because the dude's great. And he's really good in Sonic the Hedgehog. He kind of gives humanity to it.
He's good in everything. I mean, he never phones anything in. I mean, that guy, and he's great to have on set. I mean, he's an asset, I think, to any production. I don't know. I love the guy.
All right, let's keep going here. Let's see. Ethan Holtgate writes, "Hi, John. Do you think Netflix are foolish to not release content they spend money on to make on Blu-ray to provide commentary and special features?" No, not at all. Listen, the whole point of Netflix is to get people off of Blu-rays. Netflix, the Blu-ray is the enemy of Netflix. Netflix makes their content so that you will sign up to their streaming service. That's why they create their things. Now, I do think they should make commentary and stuff like that on their stuff and make it available as a part of their streaming service. But if you're Netflix and your whole goal is to get people off of their DVD players and Blu-ray players and to watch your streaming service, then putting your stuff on DVD and Blu-ray becomes counterproductive. And guess what? Rob, you and I have talked about this before. At some point in the not so distant future, Disney's going to start doing that too. You're going to see Disney in the next few years, maybe 3 years down the line, they're going to be some titles that don't get a disc release. And then there's going to be even more titles that don't get disc release. And if you want to watch their movies, it's going to be on Disney Plus because that's their new business model. But how would you answer that question?
Well, John, you know me, I love my physical media.
Yes.
I love physical media, but the fact of physical media, it's been dropping every year. It's at least a 15% drop in sales. And Disney had their fire sale. Basically, they put out their last hurrah of animated titles. They're putting out the Skywalker box set on 4K, but physical media is going away. It's going away. And, with Netflix, look, what I would love to get a full-blown copy of The Irishman. Criterion is releasing Roma and on Blu-ray. And the world has just changed. It's just changed, and physical media, maybe it'll stay as a niche thing, but Blu-ray, Netflix, I'm sorry, there's no future. There's no future there. I don't mean to be a bummer,
right?
But,
and you're not saying you don't think there should be a future for it because you love your physical media stuff.
I do. I mean, still to this day, having a great 4K disc of something. The quality is better. The sound quality obviously is better. Just because streaming right now, our pipelines can't deliver the kind of signal that you can get off a piece of physical media. But unfortunately, as somebody once said to me, those damn millennials, maybe a Generation Z person said, Rob, your fascination with those discs, putting them in machines, it's so 20th century. And I have to say, they're right. It is. I'm still attached to the idea of I love buying these things. I love owning them. It makes me I feel movies are special. Like I showed you at the beginning of this show before we went online. Look at this beautiful Society disc.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
I mean, I got the great Arrow box set, and you're like, I know you're looking at me disdainfully. You wouldn't say anything, but you're like, God, why would he buy this crap? Well, I love it. I love it. But yes, it's not. It's just a different situation. And streaming services, that's why Disney Plus. Once you have Disney Plus, I look at my beautiful 4K collection of MCU movies, and even I'm like, well, I like them, but it's all there on Disney Plus, and it looks pretty good. And I can switch between them if I want to watch The Airport Attack. And the same is true of Netflix. I mean, you can flip around and watch your favorite scenes, and I'm torn, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm buying movies because it's habitual. I don't know.
Well, listen, now's a good time to keep buying them because people say, John, should I bother buying them anymore? And I'm like, if you like the physical media stuff, now more than ever is the time to buy it because there's going to come a time pretty soon when you can't. So if you like that stuff, I encourage you to buy it now. And hey, hopefully it'll become worth something. But Rob, it reminds me a lot of that scene in The Rock, where one of the opening scenes of the movie, you got Nicolas Cage and he's playing his record. He's playing his record player. People are looking at him like, why do you have that? Like, why don't you move to CDs? He goes, first of all, he holds up the vinyl. These sound better. And it's just a different thing with every new iteration. There's a new thing that replaces the previous thing. But yeah, man, keep buying that physical media. All right, last question we have here with Rob. Let's do two more questions with Rob still here because he's got things he's got to do. Chris Warden writes, started watching the morning show on Apple TV and I'm loving it. Great writing and fantastic performances from Aniston, Witherspoon, and Carell. It's definitely filled a void since Newsroom ended. I've never really thought of it as a Newsroom replacement. Rob, you and I have talked about this. I love this show. I think they did it, and I was not looking forward to it at all. And I was really impressed with it. Have you started watching? I can't remember if you started watching Morning Show or not.
No, I'm dying to see For All Mankind, and I just haven't dropped. I haven't dropped for Apple Plus yet, but I'm going to. I really want to see that movie, The Banker. I guess.
Oh right, yes.
That's coming out, and For All Mankind. I think I've got to get it. But look, I'm a fan of what I think Reese Witherspoon, as she's moved into producing. I've always been a fan of hers. I mean, I loved Legally Blonde. I loved Election. Hell, I even loved Cruel Intentions. I'm a huge Reese Witherspoon fan. And I think I want to get that just to support what she's doing. And I've really liked how she's sort of moved into producing as well. And she's really putting her weight behind things. I love when actors do that, when they use their clout to produce projects. Tom Hanks did that. With like From the Earth to the Moon and obviously Band of Brothers and things like that. I love when that happens because what you usually get from those actors is something that not only showcases their talents, but also the things that they're passionate about. So usually you get a high caliber of entertainment. And that's all I've ever heard about the morning show is how good it is. Yeah, so I really want to see it.
I was not looking forward to anything on Disney or on Apple TV Plus, to be honest with you, but Morning Show, For All Mankind, they're really, really good. But the only reason I got it is because I bought an iPad before Apple TV launched, so they gave me a free year of Apple TV Plus. So and that's why I checked it out, and I'm really glad that they did. All right, last question with Rob here. Colin writes, why don't the Tim Burton Batman movies don't get the credit they deserve? I think they are dark and gritty, especially Batman Returns. Danny DeVito's Penguin was dark and was a dark and terrifying villain. I've got to disagree with you, Colin, in the sense that I hear people talk about Burton's Batman films a lot. I hear it talked about a lot. Now, I'm not as big of a fan as the second one with DeVito. I mean, I like DeVito. I love Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, all that kind of stuff, but I didn't like it as much as the first one. But I hear, Rob, am I missing something? But I hear a lot of people talking about Burton's Batman films all the time. Don't you?
I do too. And, when they came out, that Batman, there was, people forget, but in the summer of '89, the world was gripped by Batman fever. I mean, people were so excited to see the film, and it was a big deal. I mean, now when you look back on it, especially in the world that we have now of the Nolan Batman films, they're very different takes. And I don't think Batman Returns is perfect, but I like it even better than the original Batman because it's so Tim Burton. It's Tim Burton's mind writ large on the big screen, and I loved it. And it's so quirky and weird, and it's the soul of darkness from Burton's old mind. And I think the Burton Batman movies really, they hold up unto themselves. They're really truly a director's vision, and that's what I love about those movies.
All right, Rob, I know you got things you got to do. You got stuff you're working on, so thanks so much for being here, dude. In the meantime, though, where can people follow you and all your adventures online?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or of course on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my show Robservations.
All right, dude. Thanks a lot for being here, and we will look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, my friend. So see you later. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Robert Meyer Burnett. Make sure you check out his channel as well along the way. All right, let's keep things moving here. We still got about 20 minutes. Let's get through as many as we can. Let's see. JB Bonifacio writes, a day may come when the courage of men, here we go, when the courage of men fail, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day. Stay home, stay safe, stay positive, everybody. A little bit. It's always good to have a little bit of Lord of the Rings. And either today or tomorrow, JB, I start my what should be annual watch of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This is just a good time to get caught back up on the. I just love the way he says that one line. but it is not this day. See the hair on my arm standing up. God, I love that movie. All right, Jesse Lopez writes, hey, John, so did you hear that a stunt coordinator had recently said that the long-awaited Flash film would have began pre-production next month had it not been for the pandemic? Any thoughts? I have my doubts. And honestly, like, people like stunt coordinators, and there's a lot of people in the chain of a movie that get certain degrees of information. I'm not saying this stunt coordinator is lying. Maybe that was their understanding, but that doesn't necessarily mean that was the case. It may have been the original plan, then they find out 2 weeks before it doesn't, but whatever. Listen, the Flash thing for me is I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just saying I'll believe it when I see it. Because they keep saying it's happening, they keep saying it's going to be doing, but remember, this was a movie that was already supposed to be out in theaters 2 years ago. This is a movie that was already supposed to be in theaters 2 years ago, and they've never started shooting a thing. They've been through 4 sets of directors, 5 sets of writers, all this kind of stuff. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just simply saying I'm at a place as a film fan that I'm like, I'm not going to waste any time thinking about it or worrying about it until they actually start shooting. And because we've heard all these things, so, it's going to start shooting next month, and then it never does. It's going to start shooting in the spring. Spring comes and goes, and it doesn't. We've got this director, and now that director's not there anymore. We've just had too many things with it that I've just got to the place that I do with some other movies as well, where I'm just like, I'll just believe when I see it. And it sucks because I love Ezra Miller as Flash. I really like, not everybody does, but I like Ezra Miller's Flash. So I will believe it, Jesse. I'll believe it when I see it, buddy. That's just where I'm at right now. So until I see pictures on set that they're actually filming, I'm going to, just kind of go, okay, I'll just believe it when I see it. That's where I'm at. All right, Angela S. writes, me and my husband, we being together for 20 years in December. Happy anniversary. We are talking about the first movies we saw together, and they are Castaway. Wow. What a contrast. Castaway, brilliant. Joe Dirt. Castaway, Joe Dirt, and the Fast and Furious 1. Do you remember the first 3 movies you and Ann saw together? I remember the first 2. The first movie we ever saw together, and it was at home, was 30 Days of Night. 30 Days of Night was the first movie, and it was on DVD. 30 Days of Night was the first movie we watched together. The next movie we watched together was Iron Man. Iron Man was the next movie we watched together. I can't remember what the third one was, but those are the movies that we saw together, and I remember them very fondly. I have very smiling memories, Angela. I won't go into why I'm smiling, but smiling memories. All right, Cody Cordy writes, hey, John, watched 2 of your recommended films from home. I saw Hero, and I really love that movie. Great action, great story, and just looks beautiful. And then a good old-fashioned orgy. What the fuck did I just watch? It was so funny. Thanks for those recommendations. And yes, Hero, the Jet Li film, guys, you got to watch. It is. I call it the most beautiful film you've ever seen from a visual standpoint. From a visual standpoint, I still contend to this day that Jet Li's Hero, with Donnie Yen and Tony Leung as well, and Zhang Ziyi, the most beautiful film I've ever seen. I've still never seen a film that's come close to being as visually beautiful as this movie is. And of course, then the Jason Sudeikis Lake Bell movie, A Good Old-Fashioned Orgy. Nobody's seen it. Watch it. It's really funny. I mean, it's stupid, but I found it to be very, very funny as well. And, well, I'm not going to say anything else. Just see it. It's pretty fun. I'm glad you enjoyed those, Cordy. All right. Brian Clark writes, since Trolls World Tour is technically a day-and-date release, doesn't that mean it will still play in the limited number of screens that are still open? Personally, I was hoping to take the kids to a local drive-in to see it. It's possible. I mean, look, for the most part, theaters are not going to be open on April 3rd or April 10th, which it's one of the two that it's opening. Theaters will not still be opening. There's still a scrap. So yeah, it'll play in 7 or 8 theaters. I mean, so they can call it that, but it is, as the NATO guy said, they're basically lying to their audience when they're saying it's going to be in theaters and on video on the same day. Well, they know the theaters aren't going to be open en masse. So, I mean, technically you could say that, but it's like, I don't know. It's like a dude screws around with another woman and gets a blowjob from another woman, but then goes back to his wife. Well, technically I didn't have sex with her. technically, I mean, well, look, it's the same. You know what you did. Anyway, there's that. Anthony Lucalano writes, just finished watching the original The Magnificent Seven and really liked it. A seriously good Western, and it is great. Now I encourage you to see what the original of that was, which is Kurosawa's masterpiece, The Seven Samurai. That's what Magnificent Seven, where Magnificent Seven came from. So go back even one step more, Anthony, go and check that out. But yeah, the original Magnificent Seven is great. Taki75 writes, remember the deleted scene from Endgame where Tony meets his adult daughter after the snap? Yes. I think it would have worked much better if instead of her, he saw Yinsen, who then assured him that indeed he didn't waste his life. Well, I think it's just as well that it was deleted at all. It really wasn't needed. And that's why they deleted it at all. It feels funny discussing which deleted scene should they have had to have been deleted. But yeah, a throwback, maybe a memory of Yinsen and that whole thing about that. You know what the Yinsen thing reminds me of? It reminds me of Saving Private Ryan. Because remember at the end of Saving Private Ryan, Matt Damon's character is like thinking of Tom Hanks' sacrifice and everybody else who sacrificed for him. And I think he turns to his wife and says, tell me I'm a good man. Tell me that I've lived a life that was worthy of what they did. And that's what that whole Yinsen thing reminds me of too. So it's an interesting thought, Tacky. I like that. All right, Stubble McShave writes, I just saw that Robert Eggers, director of Lighthouse, is in pre-production on a Norse revenge movie set in 10th century Iceland. That sounds intriguing to me. What do you think? Sign me up. Okay, first of all, even take out, I guess I can take off my headphones now. Take out the Robert Eggers situation. Just call it, hey, I've heard of a movie that is a Norse revenge movie set in 10th century Iceland. I'm in. I'm in right there. Now you throw in there Eggers, who like made one of the most baffling movies I've seen in ages in The Lighthouse, and you bring that kind of madness to a Norse revenge movie? Sign me up, Stubble. Sign me up. I'm completely in. Sam O'Neill writes, I love Definitely Maybe. That was my movie recommendation yesterday. Another rom-com with Ryan I don't hear many people talk about is The Proposal with Sandra Bullock. I love, and The Proposal was a big hit. That's why you're not going to see me do a recommendation, because it was already a big hit. That movie is great. I love The Proposal. It's as far as rom-coms go, it might be a top 10 all-time rom-com for me. It may very well be a top 10 all-time rom-com for me. The Proposal is awesome. I love it. So that's a great recommendation. All right. Ed Minty writes, day one of UK lockdown, building Lego and watching Lord of the Rings Extended Edition. Disney Plus also arrived today. Good timing for Disney Plus to arrive. So plenty of films to keep me occupied. Stay safe. Thanks so much, Ed. And obviously you guys stay safe as well. And it is good timing for Disney Plus to become available. And actually, I was thinking the other day, when my wife isn't working, because she's working from home now, but as soon as it's 5 o'clock or she's done her work for the day, she has been on Animal Crossing, like an obscene amount of hours in the last couple of days. An obscene amount of hours. And I just remember thinking to myself, man, this game couldn't have come at a better time for Anne. This couldn't have come at a better time for Anne. And Disney Plus could not come at a better time for our international friends in the UK. So stay safe, Ed. All right, Matthew Chandra writes, hey, John, greetings from Toronto. I didn't realize back in '06 that George Clooney had won an Oscar. That actually made me so happy after the downfall of his Batman. He kept his head up and made it better. Yeah, I believe in the year he won his Oscar, and I think he won his Oscar for Good Night and Good Luck, I believe. Let me just look it up here quickly. George Clooney. Because I believe he's won 2. I think he's won 2 Oscars. Yeah, he has won 2. So he won for Best Motion Picture of the Year, Argo, in which he was a producer along with Ben Affleck. In 2012, he was nominated for Best Writing for Ides of March. In 2006, he was he was nominated for both director and screenplay for Good Night and Good Luck. But he didn't win his Oscar he won his Oscar for supporting actor for Syria. So that's right. He was nominated in the same year for Best Director and Best Screenplay for Good Night and Good Luck. And he was nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Syriana. and he actually won his Academy Award for Syriana. And the other one he won as a producer. So there's that as well. So yes, there you go, Matthew. All right, next up, Matthew also writes, hey, John, is it me or did Will Ferrell lose his touch between the mid-2000s and early 2010s? He was a comedic force, but nowadays it seems as if he just lost it. What do you think? Love me some Will. I love Will Smith too, or Will Ferrell as well. I love Will Smith also. I love Will Ferrell as well. But yeah, the big classics, and I still enjoy Will Ferrell very much, but his big classic stuff, it just wasn't hitting anymore. And like he did, a great example of this is one he did a couple of years ago with Amy Poehler. I believe it's called The House, where him and Amy Poehler like play a married couple and they turn their house into a casino to make extra money to pay for their kids' college, I think. It was brutally bad. So he still has his comedic talent, but the movies that he's done hasn't served that comedic talent the way like a Step Brothers or a Anchorman or an Elf did. So stuff like that. So yeah, definitely he's not at the same level that he was before. But I still contend you put him in the right movie today, he can be just as effective as he ever was. I liked Daddy's Home. Not so much the second one, but even though the first Daddy's Home got a lot of crap, I actually thought the first one was really good. But yeah, he needs to get in better projects that are better suited to him right now, and he's just not getting that at the moment. Sky Amazing Guy writes, I would have traded both the Amazing Spider-Man movies for one Spider-Man 4 directed by Sam Raimi. Spider-Man 2 is one of the greatest comic book movies. Yeah, but you know what? It was time for Sam Raimi to move on. Like, I really do believe that about most directors, that they shouldn't stay on one property for too long, because I believe it starts to sap at your creativity a little bit. And I believe at some point you need to move on. And I think Spider-Man 3 showed that Raimi, I think his creative juices for Spider-Man had just run out. Now, a lot of people whine and complain and say, but that was the studio's fault because they made Raimi put in Venom. Okay, then make a good movie with Venom. That's that. Yeah, he didn't initially want to have Venom in it. The studio said Venom's really popular. The audience wants Venom. They forced him to put Venom in the movie. Okay, then make a great movie with Venom. And I really don't think it was the Venom thing, because you look at every aspect of that movie. I just felt like Spider-Man 3 showed that Raimi had fatigued on Spider-Man, and it was time for him to move on to other projects to reignite his creativity. So I'll tell you what, I was not heartbroken at all that we didn't get a Spider-Man 4. I was surprised that we didn't get a Spider-Man 4 from Raimi. But like, I thought the first Amazing Spider-Man was fantastic. The first one with Andrew Garfield, I will argue with anybody, was fantastic. The second one, not so much. The second one was a significant step down. Now, I still enjoyed The Amazing Spider-Man 2 for what it was, but it was clearly a major step down. But yeah, that first one, I really still do really, really like that first one. Anyway, thanks for writing that in, Sky Guy. Next up, Anthony Lucalano writes, decided to watch Breakfast at Tiffany's. I like Breakfast at Tiffany's tonight instead of tomorrow, and I'm glad I did. I really liked it. A charming movie. Plus, I've got a new celebrity crush on Audrey Hepburn. I'm telling you what, Audrey Hepburn. Well, first of all, both Hepburns, Audrey, Catherine, like in their day, come on. In their day, unbelievable. So yeah, and I talked a little bit the other day about Breakfast at Tiffany's. That's a real special one to me, and I'm glad you got around to watching it. Anthony Lucalano also then writes, next up is Cleopatra. Again, whenever I think of Elizabeth Taylor, that's the movie you go to. It is not the greatest movie of all time. I mean, yeah, but there is an epicness. That is a movie that kind of embodies films of that era that were really going for epic scales, right? Cleopatra is a movie that really embodies that. All right, Ryan Lohner writes, just saw this PSA. Don't be like the Nostromo crew. Follow quarantine procedure. First of all, that sounds like a great PSA, but I will admit I don't know what the Nostromo crew is. Somebody email me, because I don't know what that is off the top of my head. All right, thank you for that, Ryan. All right, Fabian Vegas writes, happy 4th birthday to one of my, if not favorite comic book movies ever, Batman v Superman. Although highly controversial, I absolutely adored the adult and serious tone of the film. Thoughts on the overall tone and vision of the film? Cheers. I have been an unabashed supporter of Batman versus Superman. Now, I don't like it as much as Man of Steel. But I've always liked it. And I've always said that people would complain about the tone of it. There's nothing wrong. Look, Batman versus Superman did have its problems. The tone was not one of them. I think the tone of Batman versus Superman just became the scapegoat for the different things that ailed the movie. Because I'm sorry, The Dark Knight was way darker than Batman versus Superman. And nobody complains about the tone. It wasn't the tone. The tone was not the problem with Batman versus Superman. And I like that film. I like it very much, as a matter of fact. I even like the theatrical release almost as much as that ultimate cut they did. I honestly don't think that ultimate cut was much better than the theatrical version. I thought the theatrical version was perfectly good on its own. I like it. I understand why a lot of people didn't. But for me, I am one of the people that will defend Batman versus Superman. It has its issues. Don't get me wrong. I acknowledge it has its issues. But at the end of the day, I still really enjoy the movie. I still like it a lot. So I'm glad you do too, Fabian. So don't apologize for loving the movies that you love, my friend. All right. Man Mountain Gherkin writes, when theaters open up again, what determines which movies will play? Will there be any empty screens? When there won't be previous week's releases playing? That's a very good question, Man Mountain, and I don't think we know yet. That's going to be something that the theaters and the distributors are going to have to work together to figure out. They're going to have to know a few weeks in advance when they're opening and then figure out what movies they want to roll out. They got to figure which movies do we not really care if we have a long ad campaign for. What movies can we get away with putting out where we just do a major 2-week blitz promoting the film? What films we're going to have to push off a little bit later to make sure we get enough of a marketing campaign done? It's going to have to be both of them working together to figure this out, but they will get it figured out. And it's going to be interesting to see. But it's not going to open with say Black Widow. It's not going to open with Black Widow because they're going to need a good ramp up time to do a marketing push for that. But it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. It's a great question. All right. Matt Phillips, just got a few minutes left, guys. Matt Phillips writes, one of the abbreviations for Doctor Strange 2 may very well be DSD Mom. Be prepared. Multiverse of Matt. Yeah, Doctor Strange Mom. DS Mom. That's actually well pointed out, Matt. Well pointed out. Your point is well made. All right, Matthew Phillips also writes, something poetic about the Godfather trilogy is every film begins with celebration and ends with sobering silence. Actually, you know what? I've never noticed that, but I think you're absolutely right. What do you take away from the final bench scene at the end of part 2, the start of remorse, his dad, or the acceptance of his chosen life? I mean, so Godfather 3 has an ending that a lot of people discuss these days about was that the right ending? And basically it's Michael Corleone now well late in his life, sitting on a bench. I think he's feeding pigeons and just, he collapses. He dies. It shows the end of his life, right? It fast forwards a bunch of years. And I always took it personally as remorse. I see a lot of pain in that face. And I think he lived the rest of his life in remorse. It's the life he chose cost him everything. It cost him everything. It cost him his family, his kids. I mean, it cost him everything. And that's how I always interpret it, was remorse. And I said, it's a great ending, but a lot of people debate to this day whether it was even a good ending. And then beyond that, what the meaning of the ending was and what was he thinking at the time. But for me, I like the ending and I thought it was remorse. All right. Daniel, Paman writes, a movie recommendation I have is The Truman Show. Some really good Jim Carrey there. One of my favorite movies ever. And a lot of people love that movie. I mean, I still have a lot of people today when I bring up the conversation of favorite Jim Carrey. You know, there's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind gets brought up a lot. You've got things like Ace Ventura gets brought up, Liar Liar, but I also hear a lot of people say Truman Show, and for obviously good reason. Star Wars Rocks writes, hey, John and crew, I'm just wondering if Disney Plus doesn't like VPNs, because that's the case. I would explain why I'm having trouble signing up for the service. Well, yeah, so VPNs, for those you don't know, VPNs is kind of like a service you can use on your network to, among other things, make a website think you're somewhere else than you actually are. So like some people use VPNs to convince, like say Netflix, oh, I'm sorry, this Netflix movie is not available in your country. Okay, use a VPN and tell the VPN, make the VPN say, ooh, this user is actually in Bulgaria. And in Bulgaria, it is available on Netflix, right? No, Disney Plus does not like VPNs, and I'm sure they've tried to put in ways to fight it. So yeah, if you're trying to use a VPN to use Disney Plus, that might be the reason. I don't know for sure, because I don't know the technical situation that you're going on in, but that very well could be the problem that you're having. Again, I would have to know more details to know that for sure. All right, Abdul Al-Ghatem writes, hey, John, I've been catching up on movies recently, and I just watched The Shawshank Redemption, one of the top 3 greatest movies ever made in history, and Saving Private Ryan, another great one. For the first time, wow, both were amazing, especially Shawshank. That was the closest thing to perfection. What's your favorite out of these two? Shawshank. And I just referenced Saving Private Ryan earlier. I love Saving Private Ryan. That movie is great. But Shawshank Redemption is simply one of the greatest motion pictures of all time. And it is as close to perfect as any film has ever been made. It is a perfect film. It's simply a film with no flaw. It has no flaw. It has no weakness. It is as close to being a perfect motion picture as any film that has ever been made. It's great. And for you to take advantage of this time right now to get caught up on those classics, that's awesome. All right. Otaku Senpai writes, Kong versus Godzilla fight equals discover mom name a little bit of Batman versus Superman joke. Their names, your mother's name is Martha. Instead of Martha, it's Mothra. Wait, my mother's name is Mothra. There you go. And they become friends. Justin writes, a few months ago, I cut all of the MCU movies together in a complete chronological order, scene by scene, with deleted scenes and one-shots. Now being stuck inside is the perfect time to watch it front to back. Dude, I can't even imagine how big that file must be. If you've rendered it out with any kind of video quality at all, I cannot even imagine how big that file must be, or how long that is. So what is that, like 45, 50 hours long? That'd be nuts. Did you render it out at like some minuscule? I'd just be curious how big the file size on that is, but that does sound like a watching expedition. Well done. All right, Jerry J writes, with the delay of filming or pre-production of movies like the Flash movie or Little Mermaid live action, etc., how do you think this will affect their release dates? Oh, it'll absolutely affect their release dates. I mean, listen, if everything gets back up and running within the next 6 weeks, maybe you'll see them hit their release dates, but I think it's going to affect stuff like that a little bit more long-term. So yeah, Jerry, I think that's a very good observation, and I think you're right. This will definitely affect the release dates, not just of the movies that we're waiting to come out, but the movies that are supposed to be filming right now. Like you bump their production by 2 or 3 months, that's going to cause a problem. Like 2 or 3 weeks, no big deal. 2 or 3 months, that could become a big deal. So I think you're going to see a lot of the films, even for movies that are supposed to be coming out a year from now, are going to have their release dates affected because of stuff like this. So I think that's a good observation. All right, Jerry J also writes, I'm a Black Panther fan, me too, excited for this next phase in the MCU. However, with everything I've read about what's to come in the MCU, I can't see where he fits. Do you have any predictions? Thank you. Well, it doesn't matter where he fits. I mean, my ultimate thing is that it doesn't matter. Just make a good standalone Black Panther movie, like the last one does. And listen, the reality is nobody knows how things are going to go in the MCU. All we know is what movies are coming and what their titles are. We don't know anything else, and anybody who claims that they do is just speculating. So for all we know, Black Panther is going to be a heavily referenced character in every MCU movie that's coming out. For all we know. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying for all we know. But the important thing is just that they make a good Black Panther standalone film. That's the only thing that matters. I mean, look at Aquaman. They just focused on making a good Aquaman movie. Movie made $1 billion. Just make a good Shazam movie. The movie was beloved. Just make a good Joker movie. Movie makes $1 billion. Just make a good Black Panther movie. To me, it doesn't matter how it fits into the big MCU. We can just sit back and wait for that to be revealed. For now, I'm just totally happy with where they're at. All right, guys, listen. We've hit the 2-hour mark, so everybody from NR99, Serpent ZA, Yash, 50 Shades, and all the way up, do not worry, guys. For those of you who sent in these questions, we are going to do a companion video a little bit later today, and I will get to all the rest of your questions, because you sent in those questions. I'm going to make sure they get answered properly in a video. But for now, that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much, guys, for being here and being a part of it. Listen, guys, stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Take care of the people around you. Make sure you're doing all the right and smart things. And let's get this BS situation behind us just as fast as we can. So again, keep your eyes open for the companion video that will come a little bit later today. Also, don't forget the John Campea Show returns again tomorrow. Me and Robert Meyer Burnett will be back once again. We look forward to seeing you then. All right, guys. That will do it for me for now. Thank you so much for being here, just because you spent time with us, and for all those of you who sent in those questions, because number one, you gave us great fun things to talk about. Number two, you supported the channel while you're doing it, and we all here thank you very much for that. That will do it for me for now, guys. Thanks so much for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, guys, bye-bye.